And we're going to stay on that subject. More breaking news on that plane crash out of Russia. Reports out of Russia saying 8 bodies were found on site. The Russian news agency reporting the name of Yevgeny Prigozhin as a passenger listed on that flight. Prigozhin, of course, is the head of the Wagner Group, which engaged in that failed mutiny earlier this year. NBC News is working to confirm all of this. Joining us now is Michael OHanlon, senior fellow at Brookings. Michael, did you hear our previous guest? Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I would only differ on a slight point, although it may be an important one. I'm not sure there is that much of a power struggle going on inside of Russia, especially not after what's happened in the last hour, apparently. I think that even though Shoigu, the defense minister, and Gerasimov, the chief of the general staff, were always controversial and not popular with Prigozhin, Putin himself was always in charge. And Prigozhin thought that his friendship with Putin was so close and so good that he could do something crazy like stage a half mutiny and still get away with it or be rewarded for it or simply get attention and persuade Putin to get rid of Shoigu and Gerasimov. I think that was crazy. And Prigozhin is now apparently meeting his predictable fate. Putin doesn't welcome any kind of dissent, even by people who have been his friends. And so my best theory is that this was Putin exercising payback in a way that he can still deny, and that didn't require any more of a confrontation at the time when there was still danger that the Wagner Group fighters might still mutiny. Putin handled it more gradually, deflated that immediate crisis, didn't amplify or publicize his public dispute with Prigozhin, allowed his own forces to reassert full control, and then settled his scores later, with revenge being a dish, of course, that's always served well cold. That's my best guess, but we're all just guessing.
So let's just talk for a moment about the future of the Wagner Group. Who leads it now? How vital is it to Russia? Is there concern about a negative reaction amongst the troops who have been an important part of Russia's interests in many parts of the world?
That last concern, I'm sure, is still there, which is part of why I'm speculating that Putin waited 2 months, essentially, to carry out this punishment. But one thing Prigozhin said in recent days, I think probably will be borne out by future events, which is that the Wagner Group will refocus again on Africa. And I think the Kremlin will be happy to see that happen, not just because it keeps them out of the mess and the trouble in Ukraine, but because the Wagner Group serves the Kremlin's interests in Africa. It exploits resources, it gains friends and footholds and political allies, and it does so all at very modest cost and with plausible deniability. So I think Wagner troops, if you want to call them that and dignify them with that term, will continue to be active in Africa, and Putin will try to make sure he's got some kind of a loyalist who's carrying out that job, which frankly shouldn't be that hard for him to find, because again, this group in Africa is highly effective in terms of financial recompense,
sure,
and in terms of political influence.
Is it fair to say, Michael, that if Prigozhin had his way, Russia would be even more hawkish in the war? And as we try to understand whether the Ukraine offensive is, I don't want to say fizzling out, but whether we're at some kind of stalemate, what is Russia's next move likely to be as we head into autumn, a wetter season, a season that probably doesn't favor a lot more of gains on the Ukrainian front here?
So on the first question, I think that Prigozhin was, in some sense, correct back in the spring to feel that he was being left out with his men on a branch with very little support. They were being asked, as you'll recall, to assault around the city of Bakhmut, and it was really just a human wave attack style kind of thing, which left many, many of his forces dead or badly wounded. I think he was asked to do the impossible by Shoigu and Gerasimov and anybody else in the military chain of command. And I think maybe Prigozhin thought that by doing something so dramatic that it would catch Putin's attention, that maybe he could finally persuade his former friend that, in fact, Shoigu and Gerasimov and the military leadership were doing a very poor job provisioning his forces and giving them any kind of good, sound tactical leadership. So I think there was, in other words, there was an element of correct analysis and understandable frustration on Prigozhin's part. But the idea that somehow a mutiny or almost a coup attempt could be the right answer, I think, was always a delusion. And now we've seen the likely consequence of that. So in regard to what's going to happen in Africa next going forward, again, I think that Russia's approach there is already pretty well established. And as far as it goes, it's incredibly cynical. It's incredibly brutal, but it's moderately effective. So I don't expect any dramatic change there. In terms of the Ukrainian offensive, I'm afraid that I don't see great prospects for any big change, even frankly next year, once Ukraine may have the F-16s and longer range missiles they've been asking for.
Right.
But again, we'll test that on the battlefield.